Thanks for joining us. If you haven't had a chance, would love to see you drop a quick note in the chat, say hello. Of course, let us know if you've got any technical difficulties, but really excited to share a little bit about scoreboard building and keeping score for your business with you today. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm Eric Zoromski, founder and CEO of the VX Group. Realize that we are in a few days coming up on our 14th year working to help businesses like yours grow. And my cohort here, David Tisdale, coming up on his, was it ninth anniversary?
Yeah.
With the VX Group. So we've been doing this for a while. So David, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll get rolling.
Hey, good morning, everyone. David Tisdale, president of the VX Group down here in Charleston, South Carolina. It's very warm here today, so very far from fall, we'll say. Really excited to go over scoreboarding with you today. And looking forward to a lively dialogue and chat. And if you have any questions as we go along, feel free to post there. So,
yep, we'll keep an eye on chat. We'll keep an eye on the Q&A. We'll hopefully have some time for questions towards the tail end. If we're going too fast, too slow, please let us know. But let's get her rolling. All right, so today's topic, keeping score. How do we measure the effectiveness of our sales efforts within our organization? And some of you have been exposed to our measured in millions methodology, and we're going to cover that a little bit today. And then we're going to dive into some of the inherent challenges of measuring high lifetime value, long cycle B2B sales. And the reason I'm going to talk a little bit about measured in millions in a second is because this process is really built for companies that are built on high lifetime value relationships, relationships that last for decades and are worth millions of dollars. We're going to talk about why tracking leading indicators is important rather than lagging indicators. We'll talk a little bit about a stage-driven gated pipeline model and process that we use. And then we're going to introduce you to the Measured in Millions Scoreboard, which is really the score keeper for building high lifetime value relationships. And then we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. David, anything to add before we get rolling?
No, let's get after it.
All right. So like I said, just a little bit about measured in millions. I promise this isn't a pitch, but it's really important because it's the foundation for all of what we're talking about. So measured in millions is our flagship methodology that David and I have developed over decades of experience working with high lifetime value businesses. And it's designed for companies that thrive on relationships worth millions. And what does that mean? It means at the end of the day that one single relationship can be worth $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, $50 million. We're seeing clients and businesses that have had, multi-million-dollar annual revenue that has lasted for 75 plus years. So if you think about the value of that very first interaction 75 years ago, it could have been a chance meeting between a business owner and an early buyer in the 50s. That chance interaction potentially turned into hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for that business. And so that's what we're talking about. That's what we're so passionate about, and that's what we're so focused on. So who's Measured in Millions built for? So it's built for companies around the world that are stood up on a foundation of long, multi-year relationships worth millions. So we've got a few on the right-hand side. Some of these companies have been, were started by grandpas, dads. We work with a lot of family-owned businesses. So this has got quite a bit of kind of family-held aspects to it, but also getting more and more involved with private equity firms that are getting involved in investing in family-held businesses, and they want to carry the legacy of those businesses forward. So these are the types of companies that Measured in Millions is built for. And frankly, if you're selling a $1 widget to mass market consumers, you can probably go spend your time somewhere else because that's not what this is made for. I'm sure there's some ideas you could pick up, but it's really built around the people that have built their businesses around, the John Deeres, the Caterpillars, the Cummins, the Boeings of the world. So I've been doing this for 20 some odd years and have consistently found that keeping score is really hard. And there's a couple of reasons why. Number one is that the game is really, 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 really long in a lot of cases. If you're looking to build a new relationship that's ultimately worth millions with ideal customers for your business, most of those deals are measured at a minimum in months. Many are measured in years, and some are even measured in decades. For example, we have customers who, they want to get in on the next generation of Airbus's airplane or Boeing's airplane. And like most businesses, they believe they want to get in at the start. We want to be talking to the engineers. Well, that could be 10 or 15 years of investment before any appreciable revenue for the business. So most of you on here, I'm sure, are dealing with very, very long sales cycles. And it's really important to recognize that and to really behave in a way that allows you to do that effectively and really choose the battles that you fight as well. Because if it is so long, if you can't sustain an effort for 10 years to be on Boeing's next generation of aircraft, then you should probably find somewhere else to invest your energy. So that's number one. And number two is that we find ourselves measuring the wrong things. And it's kind of not our fault. It's been imposed upon us, to a great degree, over the last 20 years by, a number of the sales technology companies, the methods and methodologies and models that have been, built, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So we're tracking things that are even sometimes, vanity metrics. To me, a lead is a vanity metric. It doesn't really tell me much or really, inform what's going on in my business. Then we throw in marketing, acronyms like SQLs and MQLs, and frankly, we've used them. I'll admit it, right, David? And we're moving off of it because they just don't mean that much. And then, the ERPs and CRMs with deals and contacts and companies and, you've got a lot of things that you can add up, but what do they really mean and what are we really measuring? And at the end of the day, what we really need to be measuring is relationships and the progress through relationships, because relationships don't start with $1 million order. Relationships start, meeting somebody at a networking event or meeting someone at a trade show or getting an email response saying, that sounds interesting. Let's set up a call and having a 15-minute introduction. That's the start of a relationship. And that relationship grows and is nurtured, over the next days, weeks, months, years before it turns into $1 million relationships for your business. And that's really what we need to be measuring. And that's what we're going to talk about as we get deeper into this today. So, David, before we dive into the details, anything you want to share there?
No, absolutely. And I think in terms of your word cloud on the previous slide, it really is, it presents the risk of white noise to what we're actually doing, which is starting and building long-standing relationships that can ultimately impact the trajectory of your business. And it's, like you said, it's the world we live in terms of the explosion of the different types of marketing disciplines. And admittedly, we've grown around it and really advancing beyond it because this is what our customers care about. And again, a lot of the people on today, really the lifeblood of their business are relationships measured in the millions of dollars.
Yep. So if we're measuring the wrong things, what should we be measuring? And it really becomes an exercise of, are you looking through the windshield or are you looking through the rear view mirror? You'll hear these terms. Well, a couple of things. Number one, hindsight is 20/20, and generally pretty useless. Why is that? Because it's already happened and you can't do anything about it. So if you look at your revenue from last month or last quarter, it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it, right? That's already happened. Now you can do things to potentially impact future revenue, but that's what we want to look at and have a view of, and look, like I said, looking through the windshield rather than the rear view mirror. So we really want to move, your scoreboard from looking at lagging indicators, which tell you what has happened in the past, to leading indicators, which are going to give you a view of the future and inform more of what is going to happen. Now, it's not 100% guaranteed that it's going to happen, but it's going to give you better information to go on besides what a lot of business leaders are going on, which is kind of their gut feel. How's it feel? Are we busy? Are we not busy? Do we have stuff in the pipeline? Do we not? And really, that's not a great way to run a business these days. Margins are too tight. Competition's too fierce. We need to be better than that. So when we look at leading indicators and things that are going to inform what's going to happen, so one of the primary leading indicators that we focus on is something we've called lifetime value potential, and I'll talk a little bit about that in greater detail. And then a number of aspects of the Measured in Millions Scoreboard, which is the foundation for how we measure high lifetime value relationships, things like quality connections, qualified relationships, engagement and interest. Have they proactively shared opportunities? And that means like, hey, I'd like you to quote on this, not going to a portal and seeing, oh, there's something I could bid on. Solutions presented, opportunities won, and more, that go into leading indicators. Lagging indicators, a lot of the ones that we're pretty familiar with: revenue, profit margin, P&L. Your P&L, frankly, is a lagging indicator. Sales growth, that's what happened in the past. Customer retention rates happened in the past. It's not telling you what's going to potentially happen in the future. So we really want to start to focus on leading indicators, not so much on lagging indicators. They're nice to know. They help inform decision making, but they're not going to be the leader or shouldn't be the leading thing that you look at when you're working to manage and grow your business. I'll pause for a second there.
Yeah. I'd like to see in chat any leading indicators that people look at in their business, because it really is, as Eric is mentioning, they inform what's going to happen, what's going to happen, but we're inherently drawn to what has happened, what has occurred. And I would imagine, Eric, the cross section of these two things, there's something in between to look at both, but solely looking at lagging indicators is not the way to drive the future of your business.
Yeah, and I think people tend to lean on lagging indicators because, number one, they're producing them as part of their standard business operation. You kind of have to, because we got to pay the man, got to pay taxes, right?
Yep.
So you got to know how much you're making, how much you're keeping, how much you're spending, et cetera. So those are metrics that you really have to do as part of operating a business. The leading indicators are harder to get after. They require, number one, knowing what they are, and number two, having systems and processes and, frankly, discipline, within the business in order to really track them and use them. And David, you've experienced this in our own business, right? I mean, we're about a year and a half into really getting this dialed in, and we're very good. We're not great. We're not done yet,
right?
But it takes time to get things set, and then it gets time to get the organization to buy into it, and it takes time to ultimately get the systems and processes in place to really to take advantage of them for your business.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then there's a whole pile of junk metrics that just lie to you. Just lead count, pretty useless. Calls made, not very valuable. Meetings booked, it's nice to know, but it doesn't really mean anything unless you know how many meetings actually happened. And then what was the outcome of those, and how did that impact the relationships that you're trying to book in those meetings. People, from the marketing world, email, how many emails did we send? How many were opened? Links and ad clicks, web visits. A classic one is, we spent $100,000 on this show and we got 300 card swipes. Okay, well, that means nothing without understanding, what each and every one of those relationships' potential value is, and making sure that you're taking the time to really dig deeper into that data, match it up against your ICP, find out how many of those are really valuable, and then making sure that you're going to act on those going forward. Diana said, why do you consider a count of leads junk metrics? Because it's what we see in most business is just a gross count without any kind of analysis. Mm-hmm. So people will say, they'll go and count how many website submissions did they get without the understanding or realization that potentially the vast majority of those are frankly junk leads. They're solicitations, they're people looking for jobs, they're people asking questions, but unsophisticated organizations will count that and go, well, we got 200 leads, when the reality is that one or none of those were actually qualified, relationships that the business would want to carry forward. So, I would, if so, just a gross count, rough count of leads is not valuable. Doing the analysis and digging into it and identifying the ones that are, and strictly counting those, that is. But a lot of people won't do that because that takes 200 down to 2, and then they go, well, 2 isn't very many, and so forth, because they don't have the right context.
And Eric, something to add there to clarify: they're junk metrics without the most important metrics, which we're going to look at.
Right.
With those numbers, they're diagnostic metrics to dig into if the most important numbers are off. But what these do is dilute the focus on the numbers we should be looking at. So you shouldn't be reporting on these if you're not reporting on the numbers Eric's going to go over today.
Yep. We also see people count, they'll go and pull, they'll buy a mailing list, of, aerospace engineers, because someone sent them an email saying spend $500 and we'll send you this, this great list. And they'll upload those 4,000 names into their CRM, and they'll call those leads, and then they'll count them as something of value, and they have no value. So just having a name is really zero value from a lead, from a metrics perspective. Yep. All right. Thanks for the question, Diana.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So really, number 2 is really starting to focus on these leading indicators, and really a metric that is critical to this type of relationship development is what we've coined lifetime value potential. And the reason that it's so important is that it is the foundation for a mental shift within business leaders that are running businesses built on high lifetime value relationships. And we've kind of started to coin the term $1 million vision, and it's being able to actually see these kind of relationships that could be worth millions of dollars to your business, and really understanding that you need to act differently when it comes to those. And so what we're trying to do is to get people to realize that it's not about what are you going to do for me next week or next month, because frankly, if you need revenue next week or next month, and you're in a business like many of the businesses that we work with, and like many of the people on this, all of the people on this call that I know lead, there's nothing you can do about next month. Your sales cycle is too long. Your time to revenue is far too long. If you think about time to revenue, just to get a quote out the door, get the order accepted, get the product produced, get the invoice out the door, get paid net 30, 60, 90, 120 days, you're talking 4 to 6 months before any kind of interaction, even with an existing customer, oftentimes turns into revenue. So having this idea and understanding of lifetime value potential is really important so that you can pick out the needles in the haystack. You can find the golden goose, right? Because if you don't, they could go right past you, and that opportunity is lost. So what is lifetime value potential? You'll see it's abbreviated as LTVP. It's really the love meter for relationship development. And David will chuckle when I say that. But, a lot of what we do, we've we've talked about $1 million matchmaking, right? So this is kind of the meter. How much does this prospect love us? Do they love us enough to give us a chance? How much does this existing customer love us? Do they love us enough to make sure that we're, one of their primary vendors? And when, new opportunities come, do they call us first? Right? It's really this meter for relationship development. And so it's a very simple formula, and everybody knows what it is. They just don't use it. It's looking at what is the revenue potential times how long is the relationship going to last, and that gives you lifetime value potential, right? So, for example, if you've got a prospective customer that, in year 2, 3, 4 could be $500,000 a year, and they stay with you for 10 years. Let's say you get on an automotive program or a construction equipment program. They stick with you for 10 years. That's that single relationship, that one contact, that one opportunity, that one win can ultimately be worth $5 million for your business. And if you look at it that way, you start to say, I got to hone in on those and put all of my focus and energy towards those types of deals, because that's what's going to secure the future of my business. And that's really what we're trying to get after here. And what lifetime value potential means is it's really just, it's a lens to look through and look at your relationships and say, if they are this, I got to do everything I can to move them forward. If they're not, maybe I should be thinking about, culling the herd a little bit, right? Because we know that oftentimes small customers can be the squeaky wheel, and they can distract you from doing the things that are really, really valuable for your business. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground already. In order to keep score, the game needs rules. And so you can drop into your chat. I'm interested to know of the people that are with us here, how many have, a very structured, measurable, step-by-step sales process that they're reporting out on a weekly basis. That's my question for chat. But in order to do that, you've got to put some rules in place and rules for the game. So we've developed a very simple, what we call the 4-gate relationship development model. We work with a lot of manufacturing businesses, a lot of product businesses, very familiar with gated processes, especially from the quality space. And so we've created a very straightforward model. I'll give you a quick introduction to it today. And it's basically, again, around the word relationship, right? And we start with qualified relationship. So have we achieved a qualified relationship, which is a valid, trust-based relationship with a new prospect that fits our ideal customer profile? David throws a poll up there. All right. I just did it. So I'm counting. So qualified relationship, it's got to be a relationship that's started. It's got to be valid. It's got to be trust-based. So they have to trust you, and that you're a good potential partner. And it has to be a fit with your ideal customer profile. Somebody that's going to bring millions of dollars to your business ultimately. So that's gate 1. Gate 2 is what we call opportunity presented. So the prospect is proactively shared. And the word proactive to me is very important. They said, hey, I'd love for you to take a look at this problem or help me with this opportunity. Again, not, oh, you can register for our portal, and if you see something you want to bid on, feel free to submit a bid. That's not opportunity presented. That's opportunity harvested or order taking. So the prospect is proactively shared a qualified, respondable opportunity. So something that we would normally respond to in the course of business that's a good fit for our product and service. The third gate is solution presented. So we've presented a compelling solution that solves a real problem or addresses a pressing need. Again, just throwing quotes against, RFQs generally doesn't meet that unless that is just the process that you do, with one of your existing customers. Got to be problem solution based and compelling. Too often we see people, their idea of compelling is, hey, I put together this spreadsheet with a quote, or here's your quote, let me know what you think. And then that becomes the sales effort. When you're talking about these high lifetime value relationships, it's got to be more than that. And then ultimately, the fourth gate, where the rubber meets the road, we've won our first business with a new high lifetime value customer. And then you see the white arrow to the right. That's when the real hard work comes, because that first order may be $5,000. It's now the business's job to smoothly transition that first opportunity into the business, do a kick-ass job of delivering on it, continuing to strengthen that relationship and get the next order and the next order and the next order, until you get to the point where that client is running, where you're getting your fair share of their lifetime value potential. David, I'm going to take a sip of coffee. You can jump in there.
Yeah. Obviously, there are a handful of manufacturers and anybody that's been participating in process improvement in their business career. The gate model is chosen by design to really speak the language for a lot of the companies that we work with, because it's really important to look at anything upstream from gate one. And quite frankly, that's a lot of the work that we do to get to that qualified relationship point. But in between gate one and gate two is a lot of work, because your timing just has to be incredible for that qualified relationship to just beam up to opportunity presented on the first day that you meet somebody. So there's a lot that we're going to talk about in that context.
All right, so that's really setting the stage. So let's talk about how do we keep score, and we're really using the term scoreboard intentionally because this is a game, right? And we need to keep score. We need to know how these relationships are progressing. And I will say at the start, one of the things that makes this a little bit unique is generally the numbers continue to go up. Besides soccer where the clock runs backwards, generally when you're playing a game, the score continues to go up, right? And so the metrics we're talking about here, they're not necessarily a snapshot of what's happening in time. And there are funnels and pipelines and things like that allow you to look at what's happening, as things are moving through your sales process or through your gated process if you're using something like that. This is not designed to necessarily replace that. It's designed to let you know how you are progressing with these high lifetime value relationships. So just a quick kind of definition of how we frame up this scoreboard. So again, it's focused on leading indicators through high lifetime value, long sales cycle, sales processes that last for years. It starts from the very beginning with what we would call the initial targeting, like who are we going after, who are we pursuing, and all the way through to successful conversion. And there's kind of 8 components to this, and I'll go through each of them and talk just a little bit about them. David, jump in and add color wherever you'd like. The first 2 fall into that targeting bucket. We will always encourage our clients to be very focused on their ideal customers and the types of customers that they would celebrate, even if they got a first meeting with those customers, and certainly would celebrate, any significant win with them. So targeting starts with the account targets. What businesses are we going to say, I want to do business with them? Whether that's, if you're a channel play, it could be Home Depot, it could be Lowe's, it could be a big distributor. If you're looking at, an OEM or a tiered one supplier, it could be GM, it could be Dana, it could be, companies like that. And we talk a lot, we throw out big names because everybody recognizes them, but every business has its own ideal customer. So your ideal customer, maybe, local coffee shops. And if that's the case, that's great. But you need to know which ones you really want to get out there and chase and do business with. So it starts with high lifetime value potential accounts. So those are the companies. And then within those companies, how many relationships are you targeting? So, if I'm going after the local coffee shop, I may have a list of 100 coffee shops that I want to do business with, but there may only be one person on there, from each of them. So that relationship targets may be, kind of almost a one-to-one relationship between companies and contacts. Conversely, if I want to sell to GE, right, and companies like GE, that target account list may be very small, maybe 5 or 10 or even 1, but the relationship targets may be high. So, David, you've worked to get into GE, and what'd you say? There's 20,000 engineers in GE.
Yep, just north of 20,000. Yep.
Yeah. So if you could have a high lifetime value target account of 1 and 20,000 relationship targets, right? So that helps focus your efforts and makes keeping score something that is manageable. And then we start to get into the actual relationships themselves, starting with what we call quality connections. So that's how many initial positive connections have been made between your team and a prospective high lifetime value customer, right? And high lifetime value means they fit your ideal customer profile or are a near fit, right? Or at least you believe that to be the case. And a quality connection could be, hey, I don't have time right now. Touch base with me in a month. A quality connection is pretty much anything that isn't leave me the hell alone, right? And it's also, certainly on the lead side, if you're doing lead gen, quality connections are somebody submits to your website saying they have a need. You reach back out to them and you've started, some level of dialogue would be when they would really move into that quality connection metric. Then ultimately qualified relationships, how many people are engaged, we've evaluated them and we found them to be suitable for our product or service. So web leads come in, we've had an email exchange back and forth, our team has taken a look at their website, all of the indicators say that this is, potentially a good fit and one that we should continue to pursue. And keep in mind that this is a qualification process. It's also a disqualification process. The old adage, and it is an old adage, that every customer is a good customer is really, it's an old thought and it needs to change, right? If you're running this type of business, you need to get your team to understand that they need to take a critical eye towards every interaction that they have, and they need to separate the good from the bad, and they need to stop wasting the time on bad.
And Eric, I would add that qualifying the relationship separate from the opportunity is important and something that we see as a pitfall every day. Oh, this is too small. Okay, well, we agreed it was the right person to the right company. So we need another at bat, acknowledge that is too small for now, but things like qualifying that opportunity and saying, well, this would give us a foot in the door. So maybe we should look at this differently. That's an opportunity qualification separate from qualifying the relationship itself. And it's an important distinction that's wildly different than the way most businesses look at their sales pipeline.
Yeah, and frankly, no opportunity with a high lifetime value potential target that fits your ideal customer profile should be too small. You have to figure out a way to graciously either respond or decline, but keep that relationship moving so that you get the next opportunity that may be that first one. Most of these big relationships start with a simple opportunity because the people that are making the buying decision are trusting their reputation with you, right? These are oftentimes larger organizations that are averse to change. And there's got to be a trigger for change, and you've got to have a champion that's willing to take a chance on you. And you need to understand that even though they're just giving you, an opportunity to bid a $10,000 piece job that isn't necessarily a great fit for your business, it's a test. And if you don't show up for the test, you've lost potentially, millions and millions and millions of dollars. So it's really, you'll notice there is nothing in here about opportunity yet, right? This is about connection and relationship. Okay. So the next level is what we would call engaged and interested. So these are the prospects that we're deeply engaged with in purposeful communication. So you are in a dialogue back and forth, working your way towards the sharing of a real opportunity. And that may be 10 emails. That may be 3 introductory meetings. That may be, hey, I'm going to be in the neighborhood. Do you mind if I stop by and say hi? But it's those relationships that you're really working on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month to get your trust and credibility up to the point where these people are going to share a real opportunity with you. And don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by them saying, well, go register on our website and get access to our portal. And if you see something you like, bid on it. That's not an opportunity shared. That's in many cases a deferral. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do that, but you can't stop there. You've got to continue to build that relationship. But ultimately, we are working our way towards our first sale, and that opportunity shared is a really important metric, and it's one that you should do, with a bit of a critical eye. You shouldn't just mark them that way because you want to feel good about your scoreboard. You should mark them that way because you've got somebody really engaged and they're interested in potentially working with you.
Yep.
Then the last two, get into more of the active sales pipeline. This is where you would probably switch from the scoreboard as your primary metrics that you're looking at to your pipeline that you may be running in your CRM or your ERP, getting into solutions presented. So how many tailored solutions have we presented to prospective high lifetime value customers? It's really a count of that. And again, tailored to, got to get better at this. This is the sale, right? Everything up to it is relationship building. This is the selling. Did you have a comment, David? Or thought I heard a blip?
No, I was just calling it, the gap in between opportunities shared and solutions presented. Just to be clear, obviously there could be attrition there in terms of qualification of those opportunities. But to your point earlier, if you're truly qualifying the relationship effectively, every opportunity shared should have a discerning eye and some sort of response in terms of a solution for sure. So I was just honing in on that gap in between opportunities shared and solutions presented.
Yeah, and that gap is really critical, and I'm sure it'll be a topic of a future webinar, but that really should be tightly scripted. It should be very procedural, planful, and repeatable and scalable. That gap that's the critical step. And then obviously between the solutions presented, the negotiation, the review, and ultimately the opportunities won. So how many have we won with our high lifetime value accounts. So, I know I quickly introduced the idea of gates earlier, and this is where those gates, really kind of fall in. Qualified relationships, opportunities shared, solutions presented, opportunities won, and so that gives you an idea of where kind of the gate-driven pipeline model intersects with the measured in millions scoreboard. And here's just some example numbers of what this might look like. And like I said, these numbers, they're not a measure of what's going on today. They're a measure of the progress of high lifetime value relationships. So your target accounts will typically always be lower than your number of relationship targets. High lifetime value sales is a small numbers game. Still a numbers game, but it's a small numbers game. So those shouldn't be thousands in most cases. Certainly not companies, because you're not going to be able to differentiate yourself at that level and do the level of personalization that you need in order to really break through to these types of businesses. Relationship targets are going to be probably some multiple of high lifetime value account targets. So I want to target, CEOs, CFOs, and, VPs of operations. So let's say I'm going after 3 roles or 5 at each of those companies. So you're going to have some level of multiple there. And then we're going to start to work our way down, but those numbers will still increment over time. Quality connections, right? Not every quality connection goes to a qualified relationship. So there's a vetting process there. Again, not every qualified relationship at any particular time moves to engaged and interested, but those qualified relationships are the ones that you want to continue to really focus on and nurture through to engaged and interested. Engaged and interested to opportunities shared, to solutions presented, and opportunities won are gonna be a subset or a smaller numbers of each of those. But it's really this qualified relationships through engaged and interested all the way through to opportunities won, where you really want to focus your time, energy, and effort. Amy had a question there. David, do you want to speak to that?
I said correct. Yeah. So correct. If the question was about referrals, so if you reach out to a contact that positively refers you to somebody that's a known contact, we get a lot of ghost referrals, right? So they say, "Oh, I passed your information along to the appropriate person," and they'll reach out. That's a trap. You should be persistent and pursue that. But if they, in fact, CC their colleague, and that colleague ends up being an additional positive connection on your scoreboard, one might be a quality connection, the other one might be the qualified relationship, or they might both be qualified relationships. So that's an important distinction. So good question, Aim.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've worked through as we've implemented this is that, once somebody is in one of these phases, they don't come out, and that's why your numbers continue to increment. So in Amy's question and example, if you reach out, let's say you send an email to somebody and they say, "I'm not the right person to contact, Steve," right? The first person is still a quality connection, right? But that's where they're going to pretty much stop. Steve becomes a relationship target, right? And then once you connect with Steve and Steve says, "Hey, I don't have anything right now, touch base with me in a month," he becomes a quality connection. And now it's your job to then move Steve through these phases. So that's kind of how that scenario would play out in here.
Yep. And I just reiterating Deanna's earlier question when we were looking at the more diagnostic, or what we were calling junk metrics. Our point is, unless you're looking at these numbers, those metrics matter none, right? So you should not be reporting on the numbers that Eric had listed without the context of these numbers. So in the absence of context around the potential relationships for the companies that we're talking about, the companies that are on today, long cycle business to business relationships, those junk metrics or diagnostic metrics really don't matter without something like this in place.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, David. I think the word context as it relates to that is critical.
Yep.
We need to apply some critical thinking. And I think that there's not enough of that in today's world.
Yep.
All right. So that's pretty much the intro. And just, kind of a quick recap. We talked about the idea that one relationship can be worth millions, and starting to form that $1 million vision. We know that keeping score is hard for a couple of reasons. The game's really long. We tend to measure the wrong things, and that ultimately it's all about relationships. Suggestion to focus on the leading indicators rather than the lagging indicators, even though they're hard to get after. Adopt lifetime value potential as a key relationship metric because we want to see how that grows over time. Ultimately the game needs rules. Whether it's the 4-gate model that we've developed, whether it's another model that you're using, but you need to be able to measure progress in the game. And then we introduced the Measured in Millions Scoreboard, which is one way to build a more predictive model that measures the quality and the value of the relationships as you're developing them. So with that, we've certainly got time for questions and answers. I wanted to make sure that everyone understood, my first email said, want a predictive sales scoreboard. Let's build one together. Pretty hard to build one with the 30 or so people that are with us today for each of your businesses. But we'll certainly offer, if anybody wants to schedule a time to get together, we're happy to work with you on your specific business. The link to schedule a meeting with me is there. I also just triggered a little pop-out that maybe you're seeing on your screen. You can click that link and book a time now with myself, and either David or I are happy to spend some time with you working on this, for your business. As the little pop-out says, the value is priceless, and today and every day it's free. So, especially for you guys. So if anybody wants to take us up on that offer, please do. With that, kind of wraps up the content section. Anybody have questions they want answered, or answers to any of the questions that we posed?
Can you go back to the distinction between engaged and interested and the qualified relationship? Just speak to that a bit more, Eric.
Sure. Let's hop back here. Which ones, Dave? Qualified relationship and engaged and interested?
Yes. Yeah. And as it obviously relates to opportunities shared. So those really three, I'm very clear on the qualified relationship. And honestly, it's one of our value points at the VX group, because a lot of the companies that we work with don't really know what to do with a qualified business relationship in the absence of opportunity. But I would assume, and with my bit of context into this, once an opportunity is hinted at, or you're going down a path of getting on a vendor list, et cetera, you go into that engaged and interested. So yeah, just speak to the distinction between qualified relationship and the engaged and interested opportunity shared buckets.
Sure. Qualified relationship to me is somebody that you've had a meaningful dialogue with, and that as a representative of your business, you've evaluated them, you've looked at them and said, you know what, this is a good fit for us. They may or may not have an opportunity, at that point in time. And I think that's an important distinction. So it's somebody that you made a good connection with. They're a good fit for your business, but they may or may not be willing to be engaged now, right? And so there's really two buckets there. There's those that are qualified relationships, but not ready to be engaged. Like, they like you, and they go, yeah, if a good opportunity comes along, I'll let you know. Okay, it's your job to nurture them until that opportunity, is uncovered, right? If you're lucky enough where you have let's say you have a 15-minute introductory meeting, and they say, oh my God, I've been struggling with this so bad. It sounds like, you guys have a solution. Can you come out and take a look at our machine? Next week. Okay, that's pretty engaged and interested, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd move them into there. Now that could die ultimately over time, but you got to, then it's in either of those, it's your job to either get them engaged and interested or keep them engaged and interested until you get the number of at-bats that you need in order to present solutions and win deals.
Mm-hmm.
Is that helpful?
It is. It is. And yeah, you mentioned the at-bats, and under the theme of keeping the faith, staying focused. I think a lot of people on today may have encountered situations where they firmly believed it's the right person at the right company, but maybe they've sent and responded to 2 or 3 different opportunities and haven't won them yet. What would you say in that context on just keeping the faith, keeping the focus, if it is in fact a qualified relationship?
I'm sorry, David. I was responding to Will in the chat, and you tossed it back to me, and I'm a failure.
Just keeping the faith on multiple at-bats with a qualified relationship.
Yeah, I mean, you have to see the potential.
Right.
I mean, it can take a dozen no's to get your first yes, but just think about what it's worth. I mean, just think about what it's worth. I mean, it could be worth millions to future generations of your business. I mean, keep swinging, for God's sakes.
Another good question, in terms of competition, or again, a lot of the companies we work with are one of multiple incumbents or one of multiple vendors. So can someone be in the engaged and interested category if there's competition for the same solution or business?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, rarely are we going to be, not in a competitive environment of some kind. So those are the ones, that, a lot of times their business requires them. I've got to go out and get 3 bids. Of course, you want to be the one that's helping create the specification and be that first bid. And don't be afraid to ask that question, right? If somebody's, you need to get the smell tester out, right? If you've got somebody that you sent an email to once and they never responded, but all of a sudden they say, hey, can you bid on this? You're probably bid number 3 right out of the gate, right? But if you've been talking with somebody, maybe you've met them face to face, maybe you did a lunch and learn with them, and they say, hey, we've got this opportunity. As we've got to look at multiple suppliers. Ask them, say, hey, are we a legit partner? Or are you just looking for a third bid?
Right.
Sometimes we're afraid to ask those questions, and that's going to define whether it's truly engaged and interested, or whether it's still a qualified relationship where you've got to earn, more trust and credibility to move that relationship forward. Because until you reach the tipping point of trust and credibility, they're really not engaged and interested. And that's another dynamic to this. So you'll hear me repeat those words over and over: trust and credibility. That's what we have to build in these relationships.
Right.
And frankly, that's the tipping point between qualified relationships and engaged and interested.
Yep.
Engaged and interested, you've built enough trust and credibility that they have a dialogue going. And then to get to opportunity shared, you got to build that to that next level.
Yep. Well said.
So, cool. Other questions from anybody? Thanks for the dialogue. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good stuff. We will absolutely follow up with the recording and the slides, as Eric had posted. We'll also follow up with a link if anybody wants a scoreboard building session. Follow up with that as well, and really appreciate everybody taking the time out of their Thursday morning to join us. And Eric, anything in closing?
No, I was just going to say, here's that HubSpot link again. If you want to copy it down, or if you want to click the book now button, that's cool too. As I mentioned in chat to Will, the slides are available in the handouts tab, which you should be able to see. You can download them there, and then we'll also make them available to the people that attended. So great. Thank you all for attending. I hope you found it valuable. Love to keep the dialogue going, with any and all. So appreciate it.